What if I told you that, more than 50 years after his death, Jimi Hendrix is suddenly making headlines again? What if I told you the state of Washington just admitted something fans have whispered about for decades, and that it's changing the way the world remembers him? Why are music legends suddenly coming out of retirement just to play his songs? Why is the internet exploding with theories about what really happened the night he died? And why, after half a century, is Hendrix's name once again everywhere, as if he never left? Tonight, we're diving deep into the untold story. The chaotic childhood, the unstoppable rise, the mysterious death, and the shocking reason everyone is suddenly talking about Jimi Hendrix again. Stay with me, because the truth may not be what you expect. Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27, 1942, in Seattle, Washington. His parents, Al and Lucille, were young, poor, and unstable. Lucille was only 17. Al was serving in the military and was even jailed when he asked to come home for his son's birth. Jimmy's childhood was turbulent. His parents drank heavily and fought constantly. 4 of his siblings were taken away by the state and placed in foster care. At times, Jimmy was sent to live with relatives or family friends. When his parents finally divorced in 1951, Al took custody of Jimmy and his younger brother, Leon. 7 years later, tragedy struck again. Jimmy's mother, Lucille, died of liver disease. Jimmy was only 15. His father didn't even let him attend the funeral. Instead, he handed Jimmy whiskey and told him, "This is how men deal with loss." It was brutal. But instead of destroying him, it pushed Jimmy deeper into music. He was already obsessed, carrying a broom around school, pretending it was a guitar. A social worker even suggested buying him one. Nothing happened. But when he was 15, he finally found a broken ukulele with one string while cleaning a house with his dad. He taught himself to play Elvis Presley songs on it. After his mother's death, Al finally bought him a guitar. That guitar became Jimmy's lifeline. He practiced relentlessly, imitating blues masters and rock and roll heroes, but adding his own strange twists. By his late teens, he was playing in local bands like the Rocking Kings and the Velvetones. He had no steady job, often no place to sleep, sometimes bedding down in abandoned cars. But he never stopped playing. In 1961, after being arrested for riding in a stolen car, Jimmy was given a choice: prison or the Army. He chose the Army and joined the 101st Airborne Division. But military life suffocated him. He wrote letters to his father about how much he hated it. His only relief was his red Danelectro guitar, which he named Betty Jean. At Fort Campbell, Kentucky, Jimmy met a bassist named Billy Cox. They clicked instantly, forming a band called the King Casuals. Even in uniform, Jimmy couldn't escape the pull of music. His time in the Army ended after just 13 months, officially due to an ankle injury, though reports suggest poor performance and indiscipline. Now free, he and Billy Cox dove headfirst into music, playing clubs across the South on the infamous Chitlin Circuit, venues where black musicians could perform despite segregation. Conditions were brutal. Sometimes they were paid in food instead of cash. Jimmy survived by innovating, playing his guitar upside down with his teeth behind his head. Crowds expected spectacle, and Jimmy gave them more than anyone else. By 1964, he was tired of being just a sideman. He'd backed up artists like Little Richard, the Isley Brothers, and Curtis Knight. But he was restless. He wanted his own stage, his own music. He moved to New York, lived in Harlem, and began calling himself Jimmy James. He formed a band called the Blue Flames, and for the first time, people began to notice his genius. Then, in 1966, everything changed. At a small club in Greenwich Village, Animals bassist Chaz Chandler saw Jimi perform. He was mesmerized. Within weeks, he convinced Jimi to fly to London. Jimi had only a guitar, a few clothes, and borrowed money in his pocket. But in London, he would transform into Jimi Hendrix, the legend. London in 1966 was the heart of the musical revolution. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, all were redefining sound and culture. Into this storm walked Jimi Hendrix. Within days, Chandler introduced him to guitarist Noel Redding and drummer Mitch Mitchell. Together, they formed the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Their first single, Hey Joe, exploded onto the UK charts. Almost overnight, Hendrix went from an unknown American backup player to the hottest name in British rock. But it wasn't just the music. It was the way he played it. Eric Clapton, then considered the best guitarist alive, watched Hendrix tear through Killing Floor on stage and was left speechless. The word spread quickly. There was a new king in town. By 1967, Hendrix released Are You Experienced?, an album that was as revolutionary as the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper. Songs like Purple Haze, Manic Depression, and The Wind Cries. Mary introduced a guitar style no one had ever heard. Fuzz, distortion, feedback, things once considered mistakes, Hendrix turned into art. Then came Monterey Pop Festival, June 1967. With The Who smashing their instruments before him, Hendrix knew he had to top it. He walked on stage, set his guitar ablaze with lighter fluid, and sent flames shooting into the sky. The moment was immortalized in photographs, cementing him as a legend. America had finally woken up. From 1967 to 1969, Hendrix dominated. His albums Axis, Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland pushed boundaries even further. His cover of Bob Dylan's All Along the Watchtower became definitive. Even Dylan admitted Hendrix had found something in the song he never imagined. But with the fame came pressure. Jimi was torn between creating music and being consumed by the machine of the music industry. His manager, Michael Jeffrey, pushed him relentlessly. Jimi spent fortunes building his own studio, Electric Lady, desperate for creative freedom. Drugs and alcohol became part of his world. LSD opened creative doors, but alcohol unleashed darker demons. Friends said he could be gentle and peaceful until he drank. Then he turned angry, even violent. Still, he kept performing. At Woodstock in 1969, he delivered a searing, distorted rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. With his guitar mimicking bombs, screams, and chaos, it was both shocking and unforgettable. For some, it was political protest. For Hendrix, it was simply how he felt. But behind the brilliance, he was unraveling. By 1970, Jimi Hendrix was exhausted. He was fighting legal battles, dealing with false drug charges in Canada, and trapped in contracts that left him little control over his own music. His original band had split. His relationships were strained. He was using more drugs, drinking heavily, and losing trust in those around him. On September 18, 1970, in London, Jimi Hendrix died at just 27 years old. The official story says he took too many sleeping pills, vomited, and choked. But questions remain. Ambulance workers described a grim scene. Doctors reported wine flooding his lungs, yet toxicology showed little alcohol. Conspiracy theories swirled. Was he murdered? Was it an accident? To this day, the truth is debated. But one thing is certain. Hendrix had joined the tragic 27 Club, alongside Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and later Kurt Cobain and Amy Winehouse, artists who burned too brightly, too quickly. And yet, even in death, Hendrix never disappeared. His influence only grew. Every guitarist since has walked in his shadow. His music still feels timeless, wild, soulful, unbound. And now, more than 50 years later, he is being honored like never before. In 2025, Washington State awarded Hendrix the Medal of Merit, its highest civilian honor. His family accepted it, alongside the Museum of Pop Culture, ensuring his legacy will never fade. At the same time, the Experience Hendrix Tour has returned to stages across America. Stars like Kenny Wayne Shepherd, Zakk Wylde, Eric Johnson, Marcus King, and Samantha Fish are paying tribute to his genius. And in a historic moment, blues legend Buddy Guy, at 88 years old and long retired, is returning for one final performance, honoring the man who once called him an influence. Think about that. Decades after his death, Hendrix still inspires legends to step out of retirement, still fills theaters, still sparks conversations across the world. Why? Because Hendrix wasn't just a guitarist. He was a force of nature. Jimi Hendrix lived only 27 years, but in that time, he redefined what music could be. He transformed chaos into creation, pain into sound, and fire into art. He died young, but his spirit never did. And now, more than 50 years later, the world is still talking about him, still honoring him, still feeling his fire. So here's the question. Was Hendrix simply ahead of his time, or is it that our time has finally caught up to him? Because when you listen to his music today, it still feels like the future. Which Hendrix song do you think best captures his genius? Let's talk about it.